This week's theme is insight, which is one of the 4 pillars of well-being from the Center for Healthy Minds. And as you might know, these sessions are being put on by Healthy Minds Innovations, which is a nonprofit that aims to translate the science of well-being into actionable and useful tools for daily life and for work and for organizations and all kinds of lovely stuff like that. So we can start out with a little gratitude for the donors that make this possible. And let's dive in to talk a little bit about insight. So I'm curious right off the bat for you to maybe share in the chat one word that captures how you're feeling this morning, if it's morning where you are. But one word that just captures where you're at right now, what's on your mind, what's present for you, what's alive for you in this moment. And as you do that, the basic premise or the basic faculty that you're using when you reflect on that is very much related to this introspective, analytical self, where you can actually turn inward and analyze your state. You can analyze the state of your body. There's a sort of somatic awareness that you can do, but you can also investigate the state of your own mind. And it's something we take for granted, where we don't really know much about this mystery in our heads. There's this voice that speaks in our heads. Sometimes there are these mental images. There's this world. And maybe we can best see that when we think about dreams. Like how fascinating that we close our eyes to sleep and we lose one version of conscious awareness, and it gets replaced with this sort of hypnagogic, dreamlike state. And on top of all of that, we have this ability to investigate internally. And what the faculty of insight is all about is cultivating a healthy and resilient sense of self. And the idea here is that inward investigation or analysis of what our state of mind is, what's going on this world inside, is the basis for this sense of self that we have. And that sense of self can be unhealthy and it can be fragile, or it can be anti-fragile. It can be resilient and it can be flexible. And the beliefs we hold and the thoughts that we have, they can become possessing of who we are, or we can hold them in kind of a healthy way. And that's what we're going to explore in the practice today. So welcome, Christine. I see stressed but happy. I think a lot of us are in that space right now. So thank you for sharing that. The basic nature of what we're going to practice today is we're going to take a brief moment, 5 minutes, to investigate our thoughts. So to actively, it's sort of an awareness practice, to practice internally and investigate the thought space of our awareness. And then for the second 5 minutes, what we're going to do is actually do some analytical self-reflection on the subject matter and the quality of those thoughts. So this can be a sort of intimidating meditation. It can feel a little different from the usual awareness of breath or loving kindness. But I'll be right here with you the whole way, so no worries. We're just experimenting. We're just kind of opening ourselves up to trying something new. And thank you, Liz, for sharing. I am also feeling grateful in this moment. The weather is warming up here in the Toronto area. You can probably tell by this shirt that it's not the cold winter here in Canada has lasted a little bit longer. We had a snowfall May 9th or something, so feeling grateful for the warmth right about now. So with that warmth, let's try diving into a little bit of a practice. So take your seat, whatever position you usually approach, and if you're new to this, just find something comfortable, upright, yet relaxed. If you like to close your eyes, or if you feel comfortable closing your eyes, you can go ahead and try that. If you like to keep your eyes open, I recommend choosing a specific place to sort of fixate your gaze to help you stay grounded in the practice. Okay, so let's take a moment to just settle in here. And before we dive in, bring to mind whatever brought you to this practice today. So, what's motivating you to be here with me and with all of us to do this now? What's inspiring you to have this practice or these practices be a part of your life? And what are all the little forces and choices and decisions that have come before, either earlier today or throughout your entire lifetime, or maybe even before your lifetime? All of the specific conditions that needed to be met just so you could be here right now doing this, and just bask in that and let that motivate and inspire you forward. Whenever you're ready, bringing your awareness to the space of the mind. You might notice internal talk, that sensation of a voice in your mind, reflecting, analyzing, fantasizing, planning. You might notice mental images. They could be clear, vivid images. They might be sort of fleeting. Whatever you notice is fine. Maybe you notice nothing. The internal space of the mind, that's perfectly normal. It's perfectly fine. And unlike paying attention to the breath or body sensations, zoning in on the mind can be kind of fleeting, feel a little bit like whack-a-mole, can feel a little bit hard to grasp. That's okay. Just see what you notice and try to keep your attention in the space of the mind. This might feel hard to grasp. It might feel easy. You might find yourself distracted by sensations in the body or sounds in your environment or feelings, emotions, frustration, boredom, tiredness. All of that is fine. Whenever you notice, just celebrate your ability to notice that and come back to see what you can detect in that space of the mind. Sometimes it helps to have a sense of readiness, like you're playing catch and you're waiting for the mind to throw the ball and you're going to catch it. So you're sitting there ready for the next thought to appear so you can identify it. And if you're getting good momentum with this, you can continue on a little bit longer. But what I'll ask you to eventually do is start to turn on that self-inquiry, that analytical aspect, to try to understand what are the themes and what are the thoughts and what are the images that are appearing. Try to get a sense of what's on your mind at this moment. Maybe you're experiencing a lot of thoughts about work, or maybe you're, reflecting about something that happened yesterday. Maybe that's what's on your mind. Maybe you're rehearsing, you're planning the words that you're going to say at a meeting later today, or that's something that happens to me often. Whatever it is that you're noticing, of course, the mind can go in all kinds of random directions, but get a sense if there's any kind of theme, if there's any major topic or major area. And maybe that's about a specific event, but maybe it's a type of thinking, like a lot of worry, for example, or a lot of planning. See if you can get a sense of some of the themes or topics that are arising in general. I'll give you some space to do this now in case you don't have anything popping up immediately. There's really no place for any kind of self-criticism or judgment here. And it's very, very important, especially when you're working with thoughts and mental images, that we're not trying to say that certain thoughts should be on your mind or certain thoughts shouldn't, or that there's any right or wrong here. The real goal of these kinds of insight practices is to really be the kind of objective observer and say, what's on my mind, whatever it is okay. I just want to understand and be aware. And once you notice a certain topic or theme, and if there isn't any sort of bigger theme, feel free to just go ahead and pick one individual thought to work with. But what we're going to try to explore doing is reframing and getting maybe a fresh perspective on that thought. So let's say I'm having a lot of thoughts about a meeting that's coming up. The idea here would be to ask some questions about those thoughts. So why is that thought on my mind? What is the quality of that thinking? Am I worried about that meeting? Am I excited about it? Maybe even what is the tone of voice of my inner monologue as I reflect and think about that meeting? So try to really understand and turn on that analytical mind to try to understand what is the approach that you're bringing to thinking about this particular topic, and see if you can zoom out a little bit and see how other perspectives might be true. And then that's only one way to approach the topic. That's only one perspective on it. Again, we're not trying to judge anything here. We're just trying to look at this topic, at this theme, at this thought from a different perspective. So you might ask yourself, in what cases might my perspective on this topic not be true? Or what am I missing in the way that I'm thinking about this? Or if there are other people involved in the situation, other people who might be at that meeting, how might they be thinking about this meeting, and how might that be different from the way I'm thinking about it? To see if you can get a larger perspective. See if you can hold your own perspective in a healthy, flexible way. Okay, for these last few moments, just letting go of the reflection. I know it can feel like hard work. And just taking this time to let everything be as it is. Take a break. Give yourselves a moment. And when you're ready, slowly transitioning out of the practice. Give yourself whatever you need. You might need a deep breath or a little bit of a stretch. And just as you're coming out, I want you to go ahead and share in the chat, again, one word that captures how you feel now, captures maybe what your experience of that practice was like and how you feel now. And while you do that, maybe a word about what we just did. So often our thoughts, this voice in our head, these mental images in our head, they offer a certain perspective that's justifiable based on our previous experience, based on the things we've learned, and our intellectual approaches, as well as our feelings and our emotions, all kind of mixed together into this cocktail of our perspective of the world and what we consider ourselves, and our relationship to ourselves, and our relationship to others, and to our relationship to the situations that we find ourselves. And often what these analytical meditations can really provide is an intentional opportunity to zoom out and see things from different perspectives. And the idea here is not to change your perspective or to change your belief. That might be a result of a practice like this. You may zoom out to get a big picture and then decide that you want to adopt a new perspective, but that's not necessarily the intention. The intention is just to get a wider view of your perspective and how it relates to the larger picture. And that allows you to be more intentional in your perspective, but it also gives you that space to hold your beliefs, to hold your assumptions, to hold your thoughts in a healthy, resilient, and flexible way. So healthy being this sense that you're not grasping so that if that turns out not to be true, you end up suffering, right? Resilient means when the inevitable change of life introduces itself, you're able to somehow roll with that, roll with the punches, roll with the changes, right? And then flexible being, sometimes, yes, indeed, we do zoom out and we realize we need to be more flexible. We need to think about this in a bigger picture. So I know insight practices can be really challenging, but thank you for sharing that with me. I find it to be very, very useful. And the rabbit hole goes deep on these. So if you found a lot of resonance with this practice, I highly recommend diving in. And as you know, we do have an app, the Healthy Minds program, that has a whole section on insight. And I was involved in actually creating some of the practices in there, and this is one of them. And there's some really great stuff in there to explore deeper. So Liz, I see you in the chat. Very challenging, but insightful once I found my focus. Oh, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad you got over that challenge. One of the things I've noticed, there's a lot of talk about mindfulness in the public sphere right now. And sometimes the practices are really short, like a 2-minute practice or a 3-minute practice, and that can be very useful. But at the same time, I always get concerned that someone's going to experience just the first 3 minutes, which can be really challenging, and never get over that hump, and then end up walking away with this sense that meditation is just way too challenging. When actually, if we do something that's more like 10, 15 minutes like we just did, we have this opportunity to get over that hump. And by the way, I feel that way about retreats as well, like a 1-day retreat versus a 1-week retreat. I could tell a very similar story about. Christine, this is important to my mind and body. That's wonderful. And, it's interesting that you included body in there, because I've noticed that as well. I think there's something really powerful about, we just did a practice exploring the mind and thoughts and mental images. And Christine here had a response where she was noticing the connection with the body. So something I've noticed for sure. You learn to hold a certain thought or to hold a belief in a healthy way, and all of a sudden your shoulders relax, or you breathe more freely. And sometimes, all that mind-body rhetoric can feel really kind of out there, new agey, woo-woo a little bit. But then when you actually sort of experience a shift in the way you're thinking, releasing some of the tension in your body, you're like, oh, okay, it doesn't have to be all philosophy. There's actually a kind of felt sense here. So great. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being here. This has been so fun and wonderful. Feel free to reach out. You can always look me up. There's lots of ways to ask questions. Just contact me or the organization, Healthy Minds Innovations. You can subscribe at the link below. You can click the little bell if you want to get notifications of upcoming practices. Tomorrow, I believe we've got Dr. Richie Davidson, founder of Healthy Minds Innovations, who's going to be leading a practice at 11 Eastern, 10 Central, and 8 Pacific. So don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you so much. I hope you're safe and well. If you're quarantined, I hope you're rolling with the quarantine, even though we're months in. If you're on the front lines, I can't imagine the challenges you're facing. I hope this has provided some sort of balance. If you're providing an essential service or you're facing economic difficulties, I wish the best to you. We're in this together. There's no two ways about it. So thank you so much. Take care, and hope to see you in our next session.